We are starting today's show with a huge story on the front pages about the findings of the COVID inquiry. So this is the report looking into how politicians made decisions during the pandemic. And let's go through them here. The I, Johnson's toxic leadership blamed for 23,000 deaths. That just about sums up the inquiry verdict yesterday, actually. So the Mirror COVID inquiry verdict, inexcusable. Again, Boris Johnson in the frame. The Guardian says too little, too late. There's their headline, Tory response to COVID crisis damned in report. So they're really getting dumped on here. The Conservatives, Boris Johnson era Conservatives, but that would include Rishi Sunak as well. Then there's Mr. Johnson again. Inexcusable pandemic delays cost 23,000 lives. The thrust of it being they locked down too late, and if they'd locked down earlier, they wouldn't have had such a long lockdown. Daily Mail, betrayal of our children. So this is the separate thing, really, which is that if you have very long lockdowns, you will lock your teenagers in their bedrooms for 2 years with God only knows what ongoing consequences. And the Telegraph takes a different angle, says basically we've paid 200 million quid for hindsight. And I know you're very sympathetic with that, aren't you?
I can't believe I'm agreeing with the Telegraph and with Boris Johnson. I think he's been used as a scapegoat. He's damned if he did, damned if he didn't. I think that this COVID inquiry brought £176,000 per day to just tell us that, oh, yes, we should have shut down a week earlier, and it may have saved 20,000 odd lives on this modelling, which is a bit dodgy from what I'm reading. That you can't.
This Professor Ferguson, yes, who seems to get everything wrong, as far as I can tell.
It's the same headline he said a few years ago, and it's the same headline now. Taxpayers' money spent on this inquiry. What a waste of money.
Well,
because
let's wait a second. Hang on.
What is it?
We had a virus. There was a virus that arrived, and we didn't know much about it, and we thought it was 15 times more dangerous than a bad flu. And it turned out not to be, and we got a vaccine and so on, but we didn't know that was coming. And on the basis of that, the inquiry says we should have taken more precautions, James.
Well, I think there are a couple
earlier
of things,
on.
There are a couple of things here which I find absolutely astonishing. So, sure, the papers are all having a go at Boris Johnson. Isn't it nice to have a full guy? And there are plenty of mistakes that our politicians made, and we can all identify what they are. But this report an inquiry has cost £200 million.
Outrageous.
We have an individual who knows that they've got to justify their existence. So they come out with
the judge?
The judge who comes out and the legal profession justifying their existence. In addition to that, we have a few people who have been named, and this is where we really should be focusing our attention. So Chris Wormald, who is paid over £200,000 a year, is still in government. Is the equivalent of, Sir Humphrey Appleby.
What's he done wrong?
So he is the guy who is implicated as one of the leading civil servants who made sure, if you like, that or didn't make sure that the country was protected. And I think it's very easy to have a look at our politicians. And I remember back in the shows and the amount of, and presenting my own shows, the amount of pushback to the idea of any kind of restrictions was huge.
This is the fundamental thing here is, did we lock down too late and not tight enough?
Probably tells us yes.
Or should we actually have said we're going to do Sweden?
We're just going to say,
take your own precautions, make your own way, let's keep the country going.
I think lockdowns should never have happened. If you had elderly or vulnerable people, keep them safe. If that was my parents, it's my responsibility to keep them safe. You can't shut down an entire economy. You can't shut down schools. It was outrageous that people thought this was okay.
Yeah, but you see, I think there are a couple of other things. I think the first lockdown, I think arguably because they knew so little. But what this report should be doing is saying, here's what we should be doing later. And I would agree that a total lockdown is something that should almost never be done again, given the consequences.
Do you tell you what? It will never happen again, because what we discover is we lock down and they party. And now we know that when they have a lockdown, Downing Street has just a run.
No, that's a sideshow.
I don't agree with that either, because actually Boris Johnson didn't really want lockdowns. He was really fighting against it because he knew.
Well, he said let them all die.
We're in a mess.
Yeah, okay.
Well, we're
taking calls on this. As you can see, we're contesting even whether this report needed doing. But do you think Boris Johnson is to blame for how his government responded? 0207 862 2222. The inquiry report had over 800 pages, but the chair of the inquiry, who's called Baroness Hallett, was able to sum it up in just one sentence.
Too little, too late. There was a serious failure by all four governments to appreciate the level of risk and the calamity that the UK faced and the need to inject urgency into the response.
If this was obvious, why didn't she say it at the time,
But you see,
Judge?
this is it.
But hang on.
I
Just
don't
before,
trust
where's it?
her.
Speaking after the report was released, Deborah Doyle from the COVID-19 Bereaved Families for Justice UK had this to say.
We now know that many of our family members would still be alive today if it wasn't for the leadership of Boris Johnson and his colleagues. Throughout the pandemic, Boris Johnson put his political reputation ahead of public safety.
You don't agree with that?
I don't agree with that. I think that is an appalling conclusion to come to. And if we as a nation have spent £200 million so that we can just have one massive blame storm, give a judge £750,000
So what he got?
To come up with these conclusions. What I want to know, and what we need to know, is what are the key lessons? Too little, too late. OK, fair enough. But she blamed all four governments. So every single government was making the same mistakes. So actually, I think that takes it away from Boris Johnson.
Around the world.
Around the
We know
UK.
that, but even around the world.
Well,
Even around the world.
Did anyone handle it
More
right?
importantly,
No country really
What,
did.
Sweden?
More importantly,
They did, I think.
what we do need to look at, I think, is the £550,000 who are within our civil service, the 375 people who are paid more than the Prime Minister, and the other 40 who are paid significantly
Okay,
more
that's,
than the
that's a
Prime
bit
Minister.
separate here. Hang on.
In order to
that's
make
separate.
sure
Hang on.
that we as a nation are prepared.
Okay.
You do not
don't
expect
want to
politicians
be
who are
prepared.
not expert.
Well, I don't know.
I just think that the way this inquiry is going, I think they want this, if this does happen again, they want longer, stricter, harsher
But bear in mind,
lockdown.
I was
not doing it.
listening to an American radio station during COVID, and they said, look at what's happened in Britain. They said the Prime Minister is going around joking, I've been in a hospital shaking hands. And the next thing, he's on a ventilator. And that was pretty serious. So that's Boris Johnson being casual about the virus, and then he nearly dies. And that, in a way, was the whole thing summed up.
I know, but you can't shut down an entire economy.
Well, okay,
And you can't have
all right.
children stuck at
well,
home
we know,
for 2
maybe
years.
we know that now. We're going to be paying off the debt.
Should have been. Did we even need lockdowns? I don't think we did. I know
Right.
people are going to go mad about that.
No,
we should not have
bear
been
in
locked
mind,
away like animals.
Yes, true, but maybe true. But when it started, we didn't know what we know now. We know now it isn't that dangerous.
Which is why I've always said that the first lockdown, in order to know that you shouldn't have future lockdowns, and in order to
The
learn from
minute
it,
you start one lockdown, it's a slippery slope.
No. I understand that, but you're saying that with hindsight.
No,
I
I'm
think the
not.
first one.
We're going to take our break, but carry on.
Many people who really thought that lockdown was bad, I think would agree that the first one was probably necessary given the unprecedented circumstance, so that you can learn from it. What I want from this report, let's learn from these things, and we're not. We're just having a massive blame storm. It's turned into a political mess.
After the break, sorry, James, we're taking your calls on this. Is Boris Johnson to blame for the UK's chaotic response to COVID? Give us a call with your thoughts. 020 7862 2222 is the number you need. Before the break, we asked what was advertised in the first colour TV ad. Bird's eye peas, Ford Mustang, Campbell soup. It's Bird's eye peas. Do you want to see the ad? Shall we see it? It's going to be very green. Let's have a look. So, you want to guess the old year there? What do you think the year was, Narinder, Kaur?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. 1960 something?
Yes.
Oh,
Really?
69.
69. Oh, that was the year my brother was born.
That's the year
Lovely.
before I was born. You see, are you a 70s child?
Yes.
I'm a 70s child.
Of course she is. It's 80s probably. Later we'll be asking if drug dealers and career criminals should just lose the right to a jury trial. Some people walk into court and you know they just need to be sent down. First, is Boris Johnson to blame over his government's response to the COVID pandemic? 020 7862 2222. The long-awaited report into how government handled the COVID pandemic has been published. I'm going to give you some of the findings here. Let's go over to our board and let's have a look at the 4 horsemen of lockdown. You will recognise them. Now, although the report does talk about Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland separately, it's Westminster that it focuses on. Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, Dominic Cummings, who's the Chief Advisor to the Prime Minister, as he then was, Boris Johnson, and then Sunak, who was Chancellor. So here they are, the 4 horsemen, and it's Baroness Hallett who's focusing on the journey that they had from the start to the end of lockdown and how they did in fighting COVID. Let us have a look at what she says then. And we start with, on the right, in this weird helmet he's got on, Hancock, the health secretary, who actually comes out of this pretty badly, I must say. So she says he assured fellow ministers the UK was well prepared for a pandemic. Turned out not to be true. Hallett said he gained a reputation among his colleagues for over-promising and under-delivering. Hancock's assurances about the country's preparedness and his government's effective handling of the crisis were unjustified. So he's a blagger, this guy. And civil servants then didn't take action to rectify the over-enthusiastic impression that was being given by him, and that obscured the need for more action. Then Sunak comes out of it quite well, just a light dusting for him. Did not seek scientific advice on eat out to help out, which Hallett, you remember that? Hallett said contributed to a feeling that the pandemic was over and undermined public health messaging. And she said repeatedly he was sceptical about the need for further restrictions. But as we're saying here, maybe he was right to be. Then Mr. Cummings is a tricky figure, a destabilising influence on Downing Street, says Hallett, who materially contributed to the toxic and sexist workplace culture at the heart of the UK government. There's quite a lot of quite filthy text that he said. Offensive, sexualised, misogynistic language. He launched misogynistic attacks on a senior civil servant. Yes, she says, he had ability, but he created a culture of fear, mutual suspicion and distrust, and poisoned the atmosphere. And he strayed far from the proper role of a special advisor, tried to make key decisions that really were for the Prime Minister. Isn't that interesting? And then finally we come to the Prime Minister as he then was himself. And there's quite a lot here, but it's worth us going through it. So, Boris Johnson failed to address chaotic culture in which the loudest voices prevailed and women were sidelined. That's not good. Johnson was actively encouraging such a culture, being content to let Cummings make decisions that should have been taken by the Prime Minister, i.e. him, and failing to restrain or control Cummings. There's all this tension between these two, isn't it? He failed to exercise proper leadership in rectifying the toxic culture. She criticised his handling of the initial outbreak and the subsequent lockdowns. He failed to appreciate the need for leadership on COVID because he thought, oh, it'll all come to nothing. It didn't even feature in the top 5 issues crossing his desk in February 2020. He kept changing his mind. And the oscillation, this guy called him an out-of-control shopping trolley, led to delays, imposing restrictions, and the virus then spread at pace. So there's a lot about Johnson's leadership. So although they were roaring away towards us on horseback with all this sense of, oh, we're having a press conference every day and we're telling you what's going on, actually, some of the time, they were completely clueless. And Narinder, looking at all that, is devastating, isn't it?
I know, when you put it like that, that looks devastating, but I'm still going to stand by what I said, that anybody in power would not have known. This was unprecedented, remember. Who could have known? We didn't know who to listen to. Scientists were saying one thing, politicians another, who another thing. Everyone was coming, and no country really got it right. We didn't fare badly, we didn't do brilliantly. It's very, hindsight saying he's to blame.
She has properly taken him to the cleaners here.
She has. Listen, she has done a scorched earth. But what she hasn't done is highlight, and maybe this is the point. So she's had a good scorched earth. None of those 4 people are still in their jobs. The people who are still in their jobs are the civil servants who got it wrong. The civil servants
who didn't... Got it in for the civil servants?
Yes, because... We've spent 200 million quid on something that Sweden wrapped up far more swiftly.
Well, they are a different country. They're full of lots of tall, blonde people who stand quite a long way apart from each other in normal circumstances. We are a densely crowded country. We're breathing on each other the whole time.
Comment to make.
Well, they are.
No, but look,
they got a lot of fresh air.
I think we need to learn a lot from other countries as to how we've gone into way too much depth. And actually, I think it's Baroness Hallett who's gone way off mark here, because she's not focusing on, if you're going to spend this much money, I want to learn how do we avoid making this mistakes again. And some of these...
Do we need to know that? I mean, we're not going to have another virus like this one. Why can't she just say, look, I've had a look at this. Everyone did their best. Let's all go home. You could say that. But of course, if
I think people have lost loved ones.
That's it.
This isn't good enough for them. They want answers.
That's the key thing. And on that score, let's talk to Brenda Doherty, who lost her mother, Ruth, in March 2020. And I know for you, this is a massive thing to see at last, to see this thing in print, Brenda.
Absolutely. And can I just start off with saying, sorry, I'm not sure who your panellists are this morning. I'm afraid I don't know your names. But I hope you are as passionate and outraged about the misspent in the VIP lane as you are about the cost of the inquiry.
100%.
We're talking
Absolutely,
about Baroness Moan, are we?
Oh, not just. I mean, the thing is, if you watch the documentary on the misspent money, you will see that it's not just Baroness Moan. But I don't want to go off the subject of the report. I'm just very struck about how much we are outraged at the cost of the inquiry. There's lots of inquiries that have cost money. There's a bill at the moment, the Hillsborough Law, which is hopefully going to be passed in its entirety. And if that's put in place, that should help minimise the need for costly inquiries. But can I just say that I seen the inquiry, as much as I see the lockdown, as a necessary evil. Unfortunately, my mummy died on the 24th of March 2020. I was told she was going to die just after Mr. Johnson made his lockdown speech. The day she went into hospital, there was a football match happened and Cheltenham was on. Now, had those things maybe not happened, a lot of people lives may have been saved. So I think you have to be very clear about what Baroness Hallett said. She said that it was too little, too late. Lockdowns could have been avoided had we been better prepared. It may have been unprecedented, this pandemic. But what you have to remember is planning for a pandemic started in 2016. Brexit happened. Civil servants were moved from that to focus on a no-deal Brexit. You can plan for a pandemic. And had we been properly planned, we wouldn't have necessarily spent all that money on the misused and inappropriate PPE.
Right. Is there, and I'm conscious I'm asking this question to you as somebody who's lost your nearest and dearest, Brenda, but is there not an argument that says that actually we should just have treated this as a normal virus, and we should have said, if you are in any way vulnerable, you've got to be protected, you've got to be at home, your family got to look after you. But what we cannot be doing now, or ever again, is closing schools and closing businesses.
Nobody wants. Do you think I wanted my mother to die alone? I mean, this is what you have to remember about the implications of lockdown. So Mr. Johnson made his speech and I got a phone call to tell my mother was dying. I wasn't allowed to go her. My mother died without anybody with her. So please remember that. And a sense of empathy would go a long way. Now, what I would say to you is my mother acquired COVID in hospital. So as far as I was concerned, when we took her in, she was going to be protected, but she wasn't. And that's where she got it. And realistically, we were watching Italy. We were watching China. We were seeing how much it was absolutely devastating the elderly. And can I just say, if my mother had been asked at 82 years of age, was her life more valuable than that of 50? She'd have said, no, look after the 50-year-old. Do you think my mother would have wanted people to be locked down, schools, having children not having what they should have? None of us want that, which is why it's important we take the recommendations from the Baroness Hallett's report and put them in place so that we never have to go into lockdown. Right. I call it the necessary evil.
Okay, Brenda, thank you so much for joining us. I hear all that.
I hear it all, and I've got loads of sympathy and compassion, but I'm so confused because at one point they're saying no one should die alone, and that is horrendous that Brenda's mum had to. But at the same time, then you're saying you need more lockdowns.
But Brenda's mum died with lockdown happening, and the problem with lockdown is you end up putting ill people together in hospital, which is
But this is elderly people. And also, my mum died in hospital and she was elderly. It was nothing to do with COVID. Elderly people die, and they do die from flus and
but
viruses.
82, but she might have had 10 more years. Thank you.
I think there are some interesting points here, which is, and I think the way that Brenda spoke actually was really very helpful to understand her perspective and also to see what it is that families would like to see from this. I really dislike the comments which just then pile on blame. I thought Brenda's thoughts and compassion, if you like, shone through in the sense that we are asking our government to look after the population. And what I dislike about this report is that it's now turned into a blame storm as opposed to a what did we get right and what did we do wrong? And also, how do we deal with ministers who may or may not be equipped with the knowledge that they need in today's day and age to take the right decisions? So we're blaming them for taking the wrong decisions, but they're not experts in that field. Hang on.
But Whitty and Vallance are the scientists. It turns out Whitty
they're
and
still
Vallance...
in their jobs.
Well, yeah, but all they care about is zero COVID. They're not thinking about How many businesses will we lose? What happens if teenagers have to spend 2 years in their bedrooms? So it's all very well saying you should ask the experts.
No.
The politicians are the ones who've got to decide this stuff. We've got to take a call.
And this is why the week later happened, because they were trying to balance.
Take a call, James. Alexandra in Somerset, hello.
Hello, Jeremy.
What do you think, Alexander? We're confused by this report, as you can hear.
Well, I just heard the lady from Northern Ireland speak, and I do empathise with her. My mother was also in a care home during COVID. Most care homes in the UK are privately owned, so they're independent. Each care home is therefore responsible for their own protocols with all viruses, not just COVID. So as soon as COVID was, a plague as such, the care home my mother was in took responsibility. We weren't allowed to visit in person, but what they would do was organise a situation whereby she could be in a ground floor room and I would go the other side of the window, and we would open the window when it was warm, or we would close the window. I wasn't close. The carers lived in. Of course, you get what you pay for, Jeremy, but blaming the government, I mean, they're politicians, they're elected. As Narinder said, which I have to say as well, Narinder, forgive me, I normally tune out because I don't normally agree with things that you've said in the past. However, I take my hat off to you, and I agree with you 100% on this occasion, and I won't misjudge you in future.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you. I'm going to move on, but thank you so much. The care home thing is interesting because with care homes, the way to deal with it is to completely shut them. In other words, have residents and staff live in and nobody comes near. But it was really difficult.
That's so
because
cruel.
Because you can't have it. It's not cruel.
They didn't get to see people. They didn't get to see their loved ones.
Yeah, but the problem is it's really difficult because then you get a staff member who's ill and you have to replace them with an agency person. Then the guy comes delivering bread and he walks into the kitchen. And it's very hard.
It is.
And
it is
really hard.
Supermarkets could stay open. We had a shop in Newcastle. It stayed open. Customers would come in because people needed food.
After the break, we're taking more of your calls. Is Boris Johnson to blame? Should he apologise? People saying, look, he needs to come out and stand up and say, this is on me. A report says his government had a toxic culture, did too little too late. You've seen the details. Do you agree? 0207 862 2222. See you shortly. Before the break, we asked, what is the only sport that has been played on the moon? Is it frisbee, football, golf? The answer is golf. I was sure it was frisbee. I misinformed you there.
You did. I was quite surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking forward to my annual game of golf in a week or two.
Oh, at the Frinton Frisbee Club.
Well, it's not a Frinton. It's Frinton Links Golf Club. I'm playing there. We have a thing called the Fags.
Oh, right.
Which is the Frinton Amateur Golfing Society,
Fantastic.
in case you wondered.
Good.
I was wondering.
Yeah. So
later we'll be asking if Boxing Day hunts should be banned. A council in Devon has told its local hunt group it's not welcome this year. It's been going on for 2 centuries, and also the hunting is not fox chasing, is it? I thought it was just bits of rags and trails, and I don't know. Your calls, though, on Boris Johnson and should he apologise for what's happened. I'm going to show you the moment on Question Time last night with the brilliant Fiona Bruce, when an MP called for Boris Johnson to publicly apologise.
Boris Johnson should be hauled into Downing Street for one last Downing Street press conference to apologise to the whole country, and he should be banned from holding public office ever again in light of these failures that he's brought upon our country.
Oh, I thought there was going to be a lot of applause, and there wasn't any applause there.
That's because I think everyone knows that it should never have happened. I'm surprised he was that passionate that he must be hauled in front and
that's a pathetic comment to make. If you are an MP and you are prepared to make that sort of commentary when we spent £200 million on something, when the real problem is the civil service
civil servants.
Of course, politicians need to take those politicians. You get things wrong. You pay the ultimate price. You get voted out.
We need some callers, please.
Let's get some callers on. OK, so who have we got now? Denise in Berkshire. Hi.
Hi.
OK, Denise.
I find it incomprehensible, actually. My husband and I got COVID on the 8th of March 2020. We knew exactly what to do. We isolated. My husband, because he's got other medical problems, they sent somebody out from the surgery with full PPE to check that he was okay, and they then tested us both, and we both had COVID. We knew exactly what to do. At the end of the day, the UK was the first country to actually order the vaccines. And in May of that year, when they talked about closing the schools down, there was immediate response from the opposition about all the children that were going to miss schooling. And it's still going on today. So whatever they did was never going to be right.
Well, I don't know if you remember one of the classic moments. They had the first sign we had British people on a ship, which I think was called the Diamond Princess. And COVID broke out. And I think there were 600 people on it and maybe 5 died or something. So you've got a sense of how dangerous it is. They were mainly older people. We then brought back the Brits from the ship and they had to be transported with a guy in a hazmat suit on a coach up north to go and stay somewhere to isolate. But the poor old coach driver was forced to drive in his normal uniform. And he's sitting in the front looking terrified. You know, it's the most British photo ever. But that sort of sums up where we were. We just didn't, we weren't ready for it.
What Denise is saying is actually use your common sense.
Yeah, well, that's right. But then,
we did.
Yeah, that's right. But then, okay, this is the other side of it. Very soon after it started.
Hindsight and common sense applied together allows us to look forward as opposed to this horrible blame story.
Well, look, hindsight is of no use whatsoever because it doesn't help us make judgments about what we did then.
So
Tony in Hampshire, hello. Hello, Tony. Sorry,
you...
James, hang on. Tony's on the line. Hello, Tony.
Hello.
Sorry, apologies for being the interruption there. What would you like to say?
Well, irritated, I have to say. I think if we look at the current situation, first of all, with Starmer, everything, all the woes of the country, I would say that even James would have certainly been someone to articulate this, and I think he has many times that, the buck stops at Starmer.
Does it?
Everything that's gone on.
Sorry, it doesn't stop at Starmer for COVID, does it?
Or just
generally, yeah.
Now.
Oh, I see what you mean. So therefore, with COVID, the buck stops with Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson, I remember very clearly, and thank you very much to Brenda for giving us the reality of what this is all about. It's not about material stuff and money. It's about the effect that's had on people's lives. I remember having seen Jacob Rees-Mogg with his legs up, arrogantly and enticedly, with his legs up in the House of the Commons, and he said, referring to people that wanted to, there to be an investigation. Yeah. I remember him saying it's all a load of fat.
Well, but his legs were up during a Brexit debate, but we have to move on. We've got to take what we'll do, because we've got so many calls on this, we'll take our break and then we'll have some more callers on the line and you won't be interrupted at all. 0207 862 2222. See you in a mo. Before the break, we asked which English word holds the record for the most definitions. Turn, break, set. The answer is set. Well, come on, let's have a think then. Tennis set.
The jelly is set.
I was set an exam.
Badger set.
That's S-E-T-T, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know. I thought it was. Maybe not. The set.
What, set the table?
A set of, yes, and a set of cutlery. That's right, there are 8 of them. James and Narinder are with us. It's lively. I think we can say that. We're asking in a moment if drug dealers should just go straight to jail. First, though, more of your calls on Boris Johnson and COVID. Should he apologise, like the Lib Dem MP said? Let's get some more calls. Jill in East Sussex, do you think he should come out and apologise?
Well, he maybe could apologise, but I'm the same as Narinder and I'm the same as one of your previous callers. Very, very rare do I ever agree with her, but I do on this. I don't believe that you can put all the blame onto Boris. We have got to take acceptance of ourselves. Through COVID, I worked all the way through. I ran 2 sheltered schemes. And so that's anyone over 55 up to 99 at the time. And I was told off for nagging by the residents because I kept on at them not to mix, to wash their hands,
Did you?
wear face covers.
Yeah, yeah. So they weren't really
all
complying with it.
partying. No,
That's
and
so
this
funny.
was ages. This is from the very beginning.
All right, Jill, thank you. That is the argument for having rules, is that we tend to break half the rules. So they need twice as many rules as are actually required in reality. And you saw right at the start where they said we got one more day before lockdown. Everyone goes on the beach up Snowdon. The first day back, there was this massive nightclub thing where we don't really follow rules. William in Renfrewshire, hello. What do you think?
Good morning, Jeremy, and your panel. Most of your panel's covered that, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. I'm no fan of Boris Johnson, but all the government's made mistakes. And if you want to get him to apologise for anything, it should be for giving contracts to folk that couldn't do the job, like Michelle Moan. And also, I'd just like to finish with one question. What would have been the reaction if we hadn't shut the schools and the kids started taking it and some of them had died?
But it didn't. They
did
didn't
a
affect
very,
children.
very low death rate among children from COVID. But some of them would have got long COVID. That would have been a problem.
And actually, William, children died because social workers weren't going around because of the lockdown rules.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of abuse that took place because not all children have this, lovely household setup where they're looked after by good parents. So it's actually caused a lot of damage.
Thank you, William. Angela in Gloucestershire, what do you think?
Hello, morning everybody.
Morning.
Well, as you know, Jeremy, I come from Gloucestershire, and you can't just blame Boris. Cummins was in the mix, and the medical advice was in the mix. But the one reason we sat here and said was Cheltenham races. The money was generated, the royalty, they wouldn't shut it down because of the races. That was why it wasn't shut down the week before, and it should have been. But
maybe
why don't we concentrate? Wasting money on these inquiries gets my goat, it does. But why aren't we focusing on what he did for us, the government, the furlough, saving the businesses, helping us financially? And when Labour crack on all the time, and it drives me nuts about this black hole, why aren't they saying the reason we've got this black hole is because of the money that was spent on the jabs and the furlough and helping us through, helping the businesses.
COVID doubled our national debt.
It did, yes.
And that's a problem.
And they frustrate me by keeping on about that black hole. I wish they'd fall in it, quite frankly.
All right, well,
Angela, we love you. I think that's one of your best callers ever.
No, but that wasn't their
Thank you, Angela. Yeah, that was that went lateral at the end there. But the budget's on Wednesday, so we'll have a whole load of other stuff to get on.